All right, welcome everybody. Now we are on. Thank you all for joining. For all those that do want to join us for the live class, you could email me at rabbi@torahanytime.com, or you can look at the YouTube notes. We have those. Hashem, hopefully at one point we'll be able to put it on Torah Anytime, so you guys could stick to Torah Anytime and not to anywhere else. And then you could see the link to add to join the WhatsApp group where we post when we have the classes. In general, the whole idea of the WhatsApp group was to do tidbits of a little bit of a share, just throw into the people that join it. I haven't done it for reasons I don't know. I really should. Maybe I should start doing that. Just a little bit of audio, a little bit tidbits of information, just for throughout the days and weeks, just to give a little bit of extra learning. But in any case, going and starting on tonight's class. Tonight we are learning Leilu Nishmat Rabbi Avram ben Chaim Yehuda and Rabbi Cheskel ben Rabbi Avram. We're also learning Lefuah Shlema to Avram Yaakov ben Yael, as well as to Chava bat Chaya Esther. So tonight, it's such an important class. We go through the Perkei Avos. It's so amazing how much depth of knowledge of information you can get for your day-to-day life. And we're going to B'ezrat Hashem speak about a very important topic that everybody needs to hear throughout the course of history. And this is how, when you learn, some Sfarim, you could see many Sfarim they're just timeless. There's so much, a wealth of knowledge of information that it's just sitting there. And if you don't tap into it, you miss it out. And in order to tap into it, you really have to delve into it. So that's what we're going to try to do. So we're speaking about a very interesting topic, a topic that we started in last class regarding the Mishnah, the third Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, in the first paragraph with Antigonus. Antigonus told his teaching was to his students: don't be like servants that serve their master to get reward, rather serve that on the condition not to get any reward, and you should always also have fear of heaven on you, right? That that's I said the English first. Usually say the other way around, but that's the Mishnah. Now, we have to, we spoke last class about he had two students, Antigonus, Tzadok and Vaisos, and these two students, they went and they took this information. They were like, okay, so what you're really saying is that we should serve our master not to get reward, which means, and they came to a wrong conclusion to saying that there's no reward, there's no afterlife, and hence they decided to leave a secular life. This is something that we spoke about in the previous class. So, throughout history, these two students ended up branching off and having their own students, and it took a very heavy toll, this sect, on the Jewish lifestyle, as they were very influential, and they didn't listen to the rabbis. They made their own thing. They started changing Judaism around. They even went and they went into politics. They were very powerful, very successful, and they caused a lot of damage, especially in the time of the second Beis Hamikdash. So we have to learn a bunch of lessons to be how did this happen? What lessons can we take out about this? Where you have a huge rabbi and he had students, and the students misinterpreted what the rabbi said, and it in turn ended up causing a tremendous amount of problems for the Jewish people. So Rav Pam learns from here that here we learn how careful a rabbi or a speaker has to be when they say something, because whenever they say something, it could be misinterpreted, misconstrued. It could be learned in a different way. And especially now, day and age, where you have the recordings, it's very hard. Once you put something out there, yes, you can issue an apology. Yes, you can issue a correction. Yes, you can do so many different things, but it's very, very difficult to correct it completely. So if someone goes and gives a Torah class and says something incorrect or wrong or whatever it is, broaches on the wrong side of what he was intended or she was intended to do, it's very hard to fix it. Can you try? Of course, and you should, but it gets very, very difficult. So even more so in now day and age, we have to be so careful when we speak, when we say something, how we present something, to make sure that it's clear, to make sure that we understand. And this is why A lot of speakers, especially Gedolim, they spend a lot of time preparing. A lot of time preparing for their classes. If they give a shir, they spend a tremendous amount of time. Not because they don't know to be able to prepare quickly and do it like that. No, because they have to know what to say. And then you have to know how to say it. And then you have to also know what not to say. You have to be interesting. You have to be able to have tochen. You have to have purpose. You have to have lessons in it. You have to have growth in it. Every speech has to be carefully cultivated, carefully curated to be able to go and to present something in a fashion that, number one, will be interesting. The number one, it will be acceptable. Number one, that people will understand it. They won't misconstrue it. So it takes a lot of time and effort to be able to produce this type of information. And that's why you have a lot of rabbis, a lot of speakers, they spend a tremendous amount of time preparing for the classes to make sure that everybody will understand it, that everybody will be able to take the right message, from it. So this brings us to a very important question. If everybody has to spend a lot of time, and everybody has to be very careful on how they speak, so what happened with Antigonus over here? Like, why was he not more careful? Asks Rabbi Feinstein. Why was he not more careful in what he said? Right? Maybe he should have switched the words a little bit. Why did he teach this in an ambiguous lesson? So we're going to go through a few answers. But the first one is we have to understand what was the process of teaching back then. So when Moshe Rabbeinu, and this went all the way until Antigonus, when he taught the Torah, he taught it in its entirety. But when a rabbi was teaching the Torah during this time period, from Moshe Rabbeinu until Antigonus, how did they teach the Torah? How did they teach? How did they give a class? They didn't go through all the details because the students were on a very high level. The rabbi would teach them, ideas and topics and different things, and they won't go into every small detail, because if you go to every small detail, you won't live long enough to be able to finish it. It was taught in this concise way, so they will be able to cover a lot of ground. Now, because the students were on such a high level, they were able to go and comprehend, and if they didn't understand something, they would ask, wait a minute, what does this mean? And they would clarify that point. This is the way that Antigonus learned from his Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik, and this is the way Shimon HaTzadik learned it from his Rabbi, and so on and so forth, all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu. So this is the way that Antigonus went and taught his students. He taught it in a concise way. He figured that people will go and ask if they don't understand. And you could also ask, didn't he see that as generations go by, the generation gets weaker and weaker in spirituality? It's very interesting. It gets weaker and weaker in spirituality, but gets stronger and stronger in technology, I think. So it's very interesting how the balance is set up. But in any case, the way that it was taught in a very concise way. And even though the generations were getting weaker and weaker, still Antigonus figured, if they don't understand, they'll just ask. They just ask. So in his perspective, he knew that he was doing something in a very concise way, but it wasn't a problem. It was never a problem. And really, we see it even wasn't a problem at this point in time. It wasn't the fault of Antigonus, but rather it was the fault of his students, which we touched upon last class, but we're going to bring about in a little bit of a stronger point today. So we're going to digress a little bit. There's an important point which is related, very related, and also very not related. So bear with me as we digress a little bit. In the beginning of when God created the world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes, and the pasuk says in Bereshis, Genesis chapter 1 verse 26. It says, "Vayomer Elokim na'aseh Adam." Hashem says, "Vayomer Elokim na'aseh Adam." Let us make man. Rashi and there goes, says, what does it mean? Let us. Who's us? There's one God, one power. It says, who's it referring to over here? What's the us? So the answer that Rashi says is that he was speaking to the angels. Because this is a lesson of God's humility. God's humility is that he goes over to the angel and says, let us make man. Why did he why did he need to consult the angels? To teach us a lesson of humility. Hashem didn't need to consult the angels. God doesn't need to figure out, what to do based off, this consensus of what the Democratic Party thinks. No, God knows exactly what needs to be. So why did God say, let us make a man? To teach us a very important lesson, a lesson of humility. A lesson of humility is so important to the effect that Rashi says, but this is going to give an opportunity for people that are heretics, people that are koifrim, people that don't believe in one HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They say, wait a minute, The Torah says straight out, let us make man, na'aseh adam, in plural. So we see over here there's more than one God. Maybe there's two gods, maybe there's three gods, maybe there's more. And God was making a meeting. Why would God do that if we know that God, there's only one God, one power, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. There's only one God. So why would God say in a way that, oh yeah, you know what? Let us make man. They'll make people think that maybe there's more than one God. And the answer is that it was worthwhile to have people possibly make an error, to think that there's more than one God, even though that's such an important factor to know that there's only one God. We say it every day, multiple times a day, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Yet it's so important to teach us the lesson, meaning that the lesson of humility is so important that it was worth it to put this huge piece of information on a risk. Because the Gemara explains, and Rav Dessler explains, and many Rabbanim explain, how would somebody go and come to the conclusion that there's many gods? If somebody has a preconceived notion, if somebody has ulterior motives, if someone has already prior interest of looking in a certain way, they'll find what they want to find. Meaning that if anybody wants to make a mistake, they can make a mistake. And this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu responded. Like HaKadosh Baruch says, let us make man. It was like, wait a minute, why are we using this? Moshe Rabbeinu said, why are we using this verbiage in the Torah? People are going to make a mistake. And God said, if they want to make a mistake, let them make a mistake. What does that mean, if they want to make a mistake? Meaning that they had the opportunity. Every single one of us has an opportunity how we see things. If you want to see things a certain way, a certain negative way, you'll make the mistake. You'll come to the wrong conclusion, but that's not necessarily the problem of the delivery of the person that's giving the message. Meaning many times it's the person itself of the receiving of the information that they have certain preconceived notions, they have certain ideologies, and that's what's gonna push them to make the mistake. And this is what happened over here, and this is what we spoke about last class also. This is what happened over here with tzaddik and baisos. They wanted a way out. They wanted to get out of religion. So they were looking for an opening. And this was an opening. Meaning it wasn't that it was an unclear statement, and we'll soon explain why. It wasn't that it was an incorrect statement, but rather it's a very important message, and we'll soon see the message. But it was the problem of tzaddik and baisos that they got influence with Hellenism, they got influence with the Greek the ideology, and they wanted to find a way out. And we see this even to this day and age, where you have people that are prone, they want to see something a certain way, meaning that somebody decides that they want to leave religion. So they're going to find excuses, they're going to find ways that it doesn't make sense, or there's questions, because they have a certain destination that they want to get to. So they'll get to that destination, and it doesn't matter if it's accurate or not, as long as there is some sort of way that they can pave themselves. And this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was saying. If they want to make a mistake, they'll make a mistake. But there's two aspects over here. Number one, the message is so important. The message of going and knowing about humility, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's worth it. Let people have the possibility of making a mistake, but this message is very important. Number two, the people that will make a mistake is only because they already wanted to make the mistake in the beginning. Meaning they didn't have the proper ideology, they didn't have the proper mindset, and hence they're going to find the way that they want to go. So we see over here there's 2 points. And we have to extrapolate that information, and we have to plug it into our situation. Meaning that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said a statement that could cause people to err. And it was because of two important factors that come into play. Number one, the lesson that comes out of it. Number two, the people that will want to make a mistake will want to make a mistake. Let's try to take that and plug it into what Antigonus was saying over here, which means is the people wanted to make a mistake, and that's tzaddik and baisos, and they, the ones that went off, they took this information and they took it into the negative aspect. And number two, what is the important lesson that's going on over here? Meaning we're going to try to even take this in a level to even look at the mistake that these two students made and find out, did they even have any premise, any basis of truth to what they were claiming, to saying that there's no afterlife or there's no actual reward. So again, Antigonus goes and says that you should serve God not to get reward. That's what you should serve God, not to get reward. When we look at the Torah, we find multiple places where it speaks that you get reward, right? It speaks repeatedly about the promise of the word. Look in Isaiah chapter 1 verse 19. It says, if you are willing and you're going to obey, you're going to listen to God, you'll eat the best of the land. The Gemara in Pesachim, page 8a, daf 8a, says that if someone goes and says that he's going to give charity on the condition that his sick son will recover, or that he will gain entry to the world to come, he's a righteous man, meaning that he is doing something on the condition to get reward. He is doing, and he's still considered a righteous man. We say this every single day, the 11th of the 13 principles of faith by the Rambam, the Maimonides, the 13 principles of faith. This is the foundation of Judaism, is ani mamin be'emunah shlema, I believe with complete faith, sha'habayre yisbarach shemai, that God, the creator, the blessed be his name, goimel toiv l'shomrei mitzvot, he is going to bestow kindness to those that listen and guard his mitzvahs, umanish la'ivre mitzvot, and he's going to punish those who go against it. Meaning the foundation of Judaism is that God rewards and God punishes. Another Mesillat Yesharim brings it down. שהורונו חכמינו זכרונם לברכה. What our sages have taught us, שהאדם לא נברא אלא להתענג אל Hashem, that we weren't created. The purpose of our creation was for reward, for that we be able to go להתענג and take pleasure in the radiance of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ולהנות מזיו שכינתו. We were created for the reward. We were created for the pleasure, meaning that there is multiple places throughout the written law and the oral law that speaks about the reward that the Jewish people are going to get if they listen to Torah and mitzvahs. So you think about it, be like, wait a minute, so how did the students make such a mistake? God didn't say there's no reward. When there's so many this should have made them even ask more. Even ask stronger, be like, wait, Rab, what do you mean there's no reward? There's plenty of places that there's a reward over here. So why is it then that Antigonus, if we have so many places, ask Rav Yisrael Meir Lau, if we have so many sources that you get reward for every single good deed that you do, why is it that Antigonus said you should serve God, that you shouldn't get reward? And the answer is that although the expectation of reward is legitimate, the actualization of getting reward is real, you will get reward, but it's not the ideal way to do things. Meaning that Antigonus is teaching not that you're not going to get reward, but rather the ideal way to serve God is not for the reward. Meaning serve God because you need to serve God and not for the reward, for the aspect of serving God. And we'll branch off and explain that. So Rabbi Lau explains there's three approaches on the expectation of divine reward. The highest level is that like of a chassid who serves out of love. The reason why this righteous person or righteous woman goes and serves God is out of love towards God. That's the highest level. The second level, the intermediate level, is where the majority of the religious people are. And that is people that hope for reward. They want to get their reward, but they know that it's not going to be obvious immediately. And they might have to wait, and they might have to be in the next world. It might be later in this world. It might be at different points in their, in their life. And if they don't get the reward right away, they don't turn their back on God. They don't leave religion or anything like that. They know that it's coming. That's the intermediate. The lowest level, the third way, this is the path of people that are secular, people that are not religious generally, and that is the people that demand payment immediately. Be like, wait a minute, God, I just kept Shabbos, so now you have to pay me. I just did this, and now you have to pay me. Where's my reward? Where's my payment? And if they don't get the payment, they don't get the reward right away, they leave religion, they leave everything, and they leave everything behind. And this is why Rabbi Lau says these people are not even religious. And the Mam Laws brings takes us a step further. One has to be careful not to say, I will serve God so that God will provide me for this and that. Because if one does do that, God could test that person. Are you really sincere? Do you really mean what you're saying? Meaning if you're doing something for ulterior motives, is it real what you're actually doing? And a person can get tested from that by many different ways, either not getting what you wanted or having another issue that comes up. God has infinite ways of being able to test a person. So therefore, it says the Mam Laws, you have to be careful not to do that, because then you could get tested on specifically that. And this is where you have, it becomes a huge issue, especially, years I've been dealing, dealing with people on this. And that is that you have people, especially when you're dealing with a secular crowd, you have people that'll be like, you know what, I'll start being religious, right? Because maybe I'm not feeling so well, maybe I'm sick, maybe I'm dealing with some sort of chronic disease or chronic issue. Okay, fine, I'll become religious for health reasons. Or maybe somebody's single and they're older and they want to get married and nothing else is working, so you know what, I'll become more religious so that I could get married. Or maybe they want to be more successful financially, they want to be more financially independent, they want to be wealthy, and they say, you know what, I've tried business, I've tried college, I've tried so many different things, it's not working. I'll try religion a little bit. Or maybe they don't have any children, and they say, okay, fine, maybe I'll do this, I'll get children this way. So we see that if people that are becoming religious for ulterior motives, they're not really religious. And again, it's better than nothing. And I gotta say that right in the beginning, because that's super important. Like if you're doing something for ulterior motives, at least you're doing something. So that's still good. But know that that's not real, right? That's not like fully real, I should really say. Meaning that if someone goes and says, you know what, I'll keep Shabbos, but I won't keep kosher. I'll put on tefillin, but I won't daven, right? I'll daven, but I won't be tznius. Like when you're going and you're kind of being the Shmorgesboard Jew, right? The Shmorgesboard Jew is like, okay, what am I going to do? Oh yeah, Shabbos, yeah, I love the Friday night meal. I'll take that. Oh yeah, tefillin. No, that's icky. I don't want that. That's not me. And then I'll take a little bit of kosher on Saturday, or kosher in the house, and then I'll daven over here, and we pick and choose what we want, right? And the Shmorgesboard Jew, you just like choose exactly what you want. And be like, I don't understand. Why isn't God giving me everything that I wanted? I'm such a good Jew. And be like, really? But are you? But like you're literally not choosing certain things. And I have these conversations with people all the time. They're like, in their mind, they think of themselves as like, what do you mean? I'm religious, I'm observant, I do, okay, I don't do everything yet, I'm not there. So I'm like, so don't consider yourself, good. It's imagine somebody goes over to the government and be like, government's like, the IRS is saying, where are your taxes? And be like, I paid like 5% of it. I'm not holding in a place where I could pay my full set of taxes. What do you think the government's going to do? That I'd be like, oh, okay, like at your own growth, like, yeah, you do you, baby steps, that's all we're asking over here. Be like, no, what do you mean? If you're not paying for it, you're going to pay for it. These are the rules of the land. This is where you live over here. You're going to pay the taxes. You can't go and start picking and be like, yeah, I don't agree with this tax. Yeah, no, are you kidding me? I'm going to pay that tax. I'll pay that one. That one, okay, fine. I'll pay a little bit. Where's my money going to? Like as if you go and you just decide what laws you want to accept and what laws you don't want to accept. We know that doesn't work. So if somebody goes and says, okay, you know what? I'm only going to pay 5% of my taxes, the obligation. I'm not going to pay everything. That person is not a good citizen. Are you going to say, no, but baby steps, I need to go there and be like, okay, if you're not there yet for whatever reasons, but at least know that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're not right. You're in the negative. You're not doing right. Like, and this is why I tell people either hate it or love it. Or people call to me and be like, listen, I'm not there yet. I'm gonna do only this. Or even worse, well, this gets under my skin, where somebody goes and says, oh, you know what? That's not for me. Yeah, no. Tznius, modesty. Like I can't, like that. Shabbos, Friday night, yeah, I like that. Like kosher, and yeah, like I'll do certain things. Davening with a minyan, no, that's not for me. But I'll do certain things. You pick and choose, and I'm like, you do you, right? It's your life. I can't convince you to. Well, I could try to convince you. I can't force you to do anything. But one thing I want to let you know is you are wrong. You're a bad person. Now you're gonna consider yourself be like, no, it's today's day and age. No, you can't say that. Everybody's such a good person. Everybody be like, okay, fine, you're a good, like go to your therapist for doing that, but just be real for a second and realize that you're not being the best Jew that you need to be. You're just picking and choosing what you want. If you were telling me that, oh, you know what, I'm going to start here and I'm going to slowly work my way to complete observance, then fine. That makes sense. That I understand. That I gather. But when someone goes and says, "Oh no, that's not for me. I'm never going to do that." Mikvah, like that's not, that's not for me. I'm like, don't think of yourself as a good person. Do whatever you're going to do, but know that you're wrong. Because if you think that you are okay where you are, you'll never change. You'll just be exactly where you are. It's very important for us to be real with ourselves, to know that if we're not there yet, know that you're not there yet. Don't think that you're okay. Don't think that you're good of where you want to be. Again, you're doing something. It's better than nothing. It's definitely better than nothing, but just know where you stand. And this is the problem when you have people and they go and they say, you know what, I'm going to be religious so that I could be wealthy, so I could do that. So, you pick and choose what you want to do, or even you do everything, but you don't do it fully because you want the payment, you want something out of it, better than nothing, but that's not real observance. That's not real commitment, right? Imagine that you go and you get married to your spouse. and you tell them, okay, listen, I'll try it for 6 months. I'll see if I like it. Maybe I'll continue it. If I see you give me what I want out of this relationship, then maybe I'll continue with it. That's never a real relationship. That never started to begin with. That's real. A real relationship, a real marriage starts, you know what, I'm going to give you my everything. You have my 100,000%. That's all that you're ever going to, that you got everything. That's it. You're all in. That's a real relationship. I don't know why people can't, they don't connect that to religion for some reason. It's like there's a separation. People understand it in relationships. People understand it in business. People understand it in so many other aspects, but it slips when it comes to spirituality. Actually, I do know. It's a thaהנה. It's an evil inclination. It's actually quite easy to diagnose that. But this is the problem where people go and they serve God in order to get reward. They serve God, meaning they're not fully serving God. They're doing it for something. They're getting something out of it, and hence it's not real. Again, better than nothing. Got to put that out there. Better than nothing, but know that it's not real and it's not the full. You're not giving it the full devotion. Avot Yosef says a story from the Zohar in Parshas Lech that Rabbi Abba would announce that whoever desires wealth and longevity should come to learn Torah. So there was once a young man by the name of Yossi, and he decided that he wants to be wealthy. So he went over and he approached Rabbi Abba, and he says, I want to study Torah so I become wealthy. He said, what's your name? He says, my name is Yossi. He says, okay. And people started calling him Yossi who lusts after riches, because that's all the reason that he's becoming religious. He wants to become wealthy. After a while that he's learning, he goes over to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, where's the money? I'm learning over here. I don't see, where's the green? Where's the gold? I don't see the paycheck yet. And the rabbi was going to respond to him, and all of a sudden he heard a heavenly voice. He heard a baskel that said, don't respond to him in a negative way. Know that he continued teaching him Torah because he's one day going to become a great rabbi. So he continued learning Torah, and one day this wealthy man arrived in the base medrash, and in the place where they were learning Torah, and he went over to the Rabbi Abba, and he says, I want to have some Torah with me. I'm very busy. I can't sit and learn Torah, but Baruch Hashem blessed me with tremendous amount of wealth. So let me pay somebody, and then we could split the reward. Pay somebody. So I said, Rabbi Abba says, perfect. I have the perfect rate. He calls Rabbi Yossi over, and he says, I got your match. You wanted to be wealthy. This guy's a very wealthy guy. He is not able to learn, so you guys will split the proceeds. You will pay you a tremendous amount of money, and you will give him half your rewards. So I said, fine. That sounds like a plan. As time goes on, this Rabbi Yossi, he gives him this very expensive goblet that's worth a tremendous amount of money. And Rabbi Yossi really devotes himself, and he becomes a great rabbi. And then one day he's sitting over there, and he's crying. And Rabbi Abba goes over to him and he says, what's going on? Why are you crying? And he said, what did I do? I've given away the world to come for just a little bit of gold. He says, my only desire is to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the world to come. He says, why did I have to give half my reward to this person? Like what did I do? And he starts, so the rabbi says, don't worry, let me take care of it. He calls this wealthy man over, and he says, listen, take the goblet back, and go and sell it, and give the money to the poor and needy, and this is how you're going to get the reward. Now he became a rabbi. This rabbi does not want. He wants to keep the reward for himself, but don't worry about it. You're going to get the reward that you want. And that's what happened. He went and he sold it, and he gave it over to poor people. And this rabbi was later known as Rabbi Yossi ben Pazi. Why Pazi? Because the goblet that came from a refined gold called Paz. So they named him Rabbi Yossi ben Pazi, meaning that his essence was because of the gold. But what do we see from here? We see from here that even if you do something for not the right reasons, it's still good because it will lead you to do more things, and hopefully eventually will lead you to do things for the right reason away. So we see over here that even though someone starts off religion, maybe for ulterior motives, it's still very important, it's still good. Continue doing what you're doing. But just know that you're not fully there yet. We see this also with Yitzchak and Esav and Yaakov. So it's very interesting when we know that Yitzchak loved Esav and Rivka loved Yaakov, and when you read these stories and when you read in the Chumash, it's hard to understand. Like The patriarch, Yitzchak Avinu, didn't know Esav, like didn't know that he was like not the best, in the, person to, like he didn't know. Like Rivka knew, well, Yitzchak, she didn't converse with him. So rather, Yitzchak knew exactly who Esav was. And he knew exactly who Yaakov was. But then something happened very interesting. Rivka, and again, Yitzchak didn't know this, but Rivka told Yaakov, Yitzchak is going to give Esav the blessings. The blessings should not go him, it should go to you. I want you to go and dress up like Esav, and I want you to go and get the blessings. And it says something very interesting. In the Pasuk, it's in Genesis chapter 27, verse 33, that when Yitzchak found out about the whole situation, the whole switcheroo, the pasuk goes and says, "Vayechrad Yitzchak chareda gedola." He became very fearful, like he shuddered, almost. And Rashi says that he saw Ra Gehenim Pesucha Mitachtav. He saw that the Gehenim was open, hell was opening up under him. The question is like, what's going on? Like what? Like, okay, so he took the blessing. Like, what was the great shudder? What was the great nervousness that Yitzchak Avinu had? And the answer is, Rabbi Twersky explains this from the based off the Baal Shem Tov, that what was Yitzchak trying to do? What was he trying to go and get Esav, to like give him the blessing? Yitzchak knew that Esav was off the D, right? He was not on the derech. He was off, and he was trying to go and salvage his son. And the way that he was going to do that, and this is how the Baal Shem Tov, explains. The Baal Shem Tov explains that there was a man who complained to the Baal Shem Tov that his son that went off, that was no more religious. So the Baal Shem Tov says, this son you have to treat even with more love than the brothers. So this is what Yitzchak was trying to do. Yitzchak knew that Yaakov was a mature, righteous person, and he was going to lead a righteous lifestyle. But when he came to Esav, he says, I need to use some sort of tactic over here. So he told Esav, he says, listen, he says, mitzvahs, being religious, there's tremendous amount of benefits for it. Look, there is a big mitzvah that you're supposed to honor your parents. So why don't you go, bring me some food, and as a reward, I will give you a blessing that's going to last you for eternity. So he was trying to convince him, look, do a mitzvah, you'll get reward. Rivka did not want Esav to go and get this blessing. Why? Maybe this tactic would have worked because Rivka knew that who Esav was, and she realized this tactic would not work, not even for Esav. It wouldn't work for him. So she said, better that Yaakov gets this blessing and not Esav, because Esav was also her son. But she saw that Esav wouldn't be able to go and respond positively to this, that would affect him, and rather the cons will outweigh the pros, and rather give the blessings to Yaakov. So Yaakov went dressed up like Esav, got the blessing at his mother's behest, at his mother's wishes. So when Yitzchak found this out, he didn't know that Rivka made Yaakov do this. So he said, wait a minute. He says, this tactic I needed to use for Esav. But now I see that Yaakov, who I thought was on such a high level, he's reverting back, that he needs to get reward for things that he's doing. He should know better than that. He should know better to know the reward is in the next world, not not in this world. But the problem was that he didn't know that Rivka pushed him to do that. And that's why when he saw like Gehenim opening up, he was so nervous, he was so scared. He says, what is it going to be at? First I thought that I have at least Yaakov, but let me focus on Esav. And then hopefully I'll get Esav. But now I see, wait a minute, if Yaakov is reverting to getting rewards, so then I don't have Yaakov and I don't have Esav at the end of the day. And that's why he was so nervous. And that's why he was so fearful of what was happening. So the Gehenim opening up, he says, what's going to be for the generations to come? Who is going to present this information to the next generation? Who is going to take this religion to the next generation? And therefore, Antigonus tells us that you should maintain your belief in the principle of faith. Don't let the reward be your primary motivation, because the real service of God is not for the reward. The real true service of God is not for a reward. Again, you will get reward, but that's not the realness of it. And that's what Yitzchak wanted for Yaakov, but he didn't want that for Esav, because Esav wasn't holding over there. But we still see that Yitzchak tried to get Esav to start at least with some sort of bribe. At least, like, do this, you'll get something out of it. So we see over here a very fundamental, basic concept that Antigonus was trying to teach to his students. And that is a very basic thing. Do things for the right reasons, not for ulterior motives. This is not something that will cause people an alarm to go off the derech. This is something that, this is the way that it should be done. Should you do it in a different way? That's still okay. But again, that's not the best way to do it. And in fact, the Mam Law says that we can even look at it from a place of gratitude. If God tells you to do something, then out of gratitude, not out of wanting to receive anything, God gives us so much, gives us everything. He says we have to be grateful and do whatever they want. Imagine that you have a child that was abandoned by their parents. And some person was walking down the street, saw this abandoned child. They took him into their own home. They dressed them, they fed them, they put a roof over their shoulder. They did everything from A to Z. Doesn't this child have to be grateful for their adopted parents? They didn't need to do anything. They just found this little child on the street and they raised them as their own. Like, if you have to be grateful to that type of adopted parents, kal v'chomer, certainly you have to be grateful for God who has given us every single thing from the moment that we are born until the moment that we die. And everything, good and bad, is all really good. Like, the amount of gratitude is endless. It doesn't stop, the amount of gratitude. So if God tells us to do something, then it's very obvious that you should do it because God says to do it, not because, I'm going to get something afterwards. Again, you will. Again, it's better to do it even if you think that, but it's not the optimal. The optimal level is to do it because HaKadosh Baruch Hu told us to do it. And this is what Antigonus is telling us. That you have to do it because you have to realize where you're coming from. This is God. And this is why Antigonus says you have to have the fear of heaven. Know where you're coming from. Know who gave you everything. Have a little bit of a karas hatov, have a little bit of gratitude. And this is something very interesting. We're just getting started over here. You guys have to bear with me a little bit. The Gemara and Brachos, and we're going to plug this in. It's so awesome. So you have to just bear with me a little bit. Everything's going to plug in so beautifully. It's literally, it could blow your mind. The Gemara and Brachos, page 7b, tells us that from the day that God created the world, no person referred to God as Adon. Adon is master. No person referred to God as master until Avram Avinu came. And Rabbi Feinstein says something fascinating. We know that Noach and Avram both tried to bring people closer to God. Noach was not successful. Nobody survived the flood. Nobody came close. Avram was very successful. He brought a lot of people closer to God. What was the difference between Noach and Avram? What was their method of getting people closer? So the way that Noach went and he presented God, he presented religion, he presented, getting close to spirituality, is, look, if you do good, you will get rewarded. So it's like a give and take, relationship. Do good, you'll get good. But what happened is if people start doing good and they don't see the good, so they start, falling off the path and be like, well, why should I be, even interested? I don't see any good. I did so much good and I didn't get any good back. Sayonara, I'm out of here. But Avram Avinu, he called Hashem Adon. He called Hashem Master. What that means is that you have to realize where you stand. This is not a tit-for-tat relationship. This is not a situation where you're purchasing something and you get a product. God is your master. You need to serve God. This is a whole different perspective on looking at religion. So Avram Avinu did not, he presented it not in a way that you're going to get reward. He presented it in a way that you need to do this. This is God who created you. And God said to do X, Y, and Z. And that means that you have to follow whatever God says. Can you serve God for ulterior motives? Again, yes, you could, but it's not the most optimal way. So the Mesillat Yesharim comes and asks two questions. We see from here, based off this background that we've been given on Antigonus and on how to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that a person has to serve God because God said so. Okay, says, ask the Mesillat Yesharim, don't we know this already? What's the chiddush? What's the novel? What is Antigonus telling us over here that we don't know already? Okay, it's fairly simple and straightforward. God owes us everything. We should do it because God said so. That's a fairly obvious statement. And the second question that Mesillat Yesharim asks is, what's up with the final part of the Mishnah that you have to let the fear of heaven be on you? It seems superfluous. It seems like it has no connection over there. And first of all, and secondly, we know that you have to serve God out of love and out of fear. So why is Antigonus just mentioning fear? So let me present to you something from the Noam Elay Malach in Parshas Truma, that this is this is going to make everything worth it. Like, it makes everything so clear, so beautiful, and so amazing. You can be jumping out of your seat. So the Noam Elimelech says that there's two different types of Jews. The first type of Jew is a Jew that has a dryness to this Jew. They fulfill everything that they need to. They go everything by the book. There's no room for error. They fulfill every mitzvah, everything, but they fail in one thing. They don't connect to God. Meaning they look at the instruction manual, they'll be like, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that. Okay, I got to take the love, I check it over here. Like they do everything down and they just check it because they're doing it like a robotic thing. They make sure they do everything exactly the way that it needs to. This type of Jew, they'll have plenty of reward in the next world. But in this world, there's no pleasure that they have. There's no, they don't connect to God. It doesn't come with an enjoyment of doing the mitzvahs because you're just doing what you need to do. You're clocking in and you're clocking out. Says the Noam Elimelech, there's a second type of Jew. There's a Jew that cultivates a relationship with God. Every mitzvah that they do, they connect to God. They have this opportunity to get closer to their Creator. So this type of person that connects to their Creator in every mitzvah that they do, they have this tremendous amount of enjoyment already in this world. They're experiencing reward already in this world. Meaning that when someone does a mitzvah with the aim of connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there is a special level of enjoyment and pleasure a person takes in realizing that they're connecting to the Creator of the universe. They're connecting to the Almighty. That is something so amazing, so unfathomable, something that just brings joy. And this is what Antigonus was saying. And listen to this, it's so beautiful. Antigonus is saying, don't serve God that you should get reward. Rather, serve God that you shouldn't get reward. Which reward is Antigonus referring to? And the answer is, says the Mishnah, Antigonus is referring to, don't serve God that you should get reward only in the next world. Because if you serve God only that you should get something in the next world, you clock in, you clock out. You do what you're supposed to do, and that's it. Because you don't connect this cultivating relationship with God, and that is a very, very bad thing because you don't enjoy this world. Says the Mishnah. This is what Antigonus is referring to, and this is why you don't serve God that you should get reward in the next world. Rather, serve God that you connect to God, and this way you have reward also in this world. And this is a bomb explanation. This is so amazing. Listen to this idea. The idea is that there's two ways to do something. You could do something and gain enjoyment in this world, or you can do something and have it only for the enjoyment of the next world. So if you're serving God only for the enjoyment of the next world, that's what Antigonus is saying. Don't do that. Don't serve God only for the next world. Serve God for the enjoyment in this world, because what happens is you're going to have joy, you're going to have happiness, you're going to enjoy this world. Every time you do a mitzvah, every time you listen to a Torah class, you're going to be jumping for joy, you're going to be so happy, you can be so ecstatic. Your soul is connecting to the Creator. You feel this level of joy and enthusiasm that you've never felt before. And that's getting reward in this world, and that's what Antigonus is saying. And that's the powerful message that Antigonus is giving us and showing us this amazing idea. Because you think about it, like, what's the chiddush? What is Antigonus saying? Like, okay, fine, we know we have to serve God. Like, we get it. We're supposed to serve God because God gave us everything, and we have to do gratitude. We get it. But that's not the focus. The focus is you're supposed to enjoy every single mitzvah that you do. And how do you do that? By connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. By going and putting this a little bit of joy in it. And we see something very, very fascinating. You take this one step further. That when someone does mitzvahs out of joy, they get reward in this world. So a crazy twist. Let's back this up to try to explain this a little bit. There's the parsha of thaהנה, right? So in Devarim, in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 47, it says there is 98 curses that go upon the Jewish people. Why? The pasuk tells us, because you didn't serve God out of happiness, out of joy, out of happiness. Because you didn't serve God out of happiness, there's so many curses that come to a person, which means that if you do serve God out of joy, let's try to explain this. So let's back it up. If you don't serve God out of joy, you get punished in this world, which means that if you serve God out of joy, you get reward in this world. And listen to this fascinating chiddush. That how do you get reward in this world for the mitzvos? you get reward not for the actual mitzvahs, because you can't get rewarded for the mitzvah in this world. There's not enough in this world. It's like going to the Buckingham Palace, which is worth about $1.3 billion. How many tens and tens of rooms they have and bathrooms they have? And imagine you go over to the king, queen, whoever we're up to right now, and you say, I have a quarter, I have a pound, right, and I have a few pence, and I want to buy the Buckingham Palace. Like, you can't buy that. It's like it's worth 1.3 billion, and even that, it's like no one's going to be able to buy it, because it's really worth a lot more than that. The value you can never, and that's what the way that it works with the mitzvahs. You do a mitzvah, there's not enough in this world that you can be able to be able to pay for that. So what's the reward that we get in this world for the good deeds that we do? That's the effort that comes with it. When you do a mitzvah out of joy, so the joy, the happiness, the simcha that you have with that mitzvah, you get reward in this world for that. Yeah, you get reward for the rest of it in the next world, but the reward in this world, that comes from the joy in it. And the opposite, if you don't reward it, you don't do it out of joy, you get punished in this world as well. And this we can begin to understand when someone goes and becomes religious so that they could get something out of it. That means that they're doing something, like a transaction. A transaction you don't do out of joy. You don't do out of enthusiasm. You don't do out of happiness. You do I got to mark everything off. You're the type of Jew that I clock in, I clock out. Where's my paycheck? But if that's the thing that you're not going to get the reward, that you're not going to get what you want to, because in order to get the reward in this world, you need to have the joy, you need to have the enthusiasm, you need to have that happiness while you're doing the mitzvah, and you only get that if you do it real. And that's why it's sort of like an catch-22, that if you're trying to do something just to get something, you'll never get the something because you're not doing it right. I don't know if you guys followed me with what I'm saying, meaning that if you're trying to get something out of what you're doing spiritually, you have to do it spiritually correct. But it would never happen if you're trying to get something out of it. I hope you get it. I don't know how clear I can make that. But if you're following where I'm going on with this, it makes perfect sense. So when you look at the Shmorgesboard Jew can never do something. I shouldn't say never. Most of the time they're not doing something joyfully, because they're just picking what they want, meaning they're not connecting to God. If they're connecting to God, this is why I have such a hard time when people go and they say, no, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. That's just like saying, no, I'm on a diet, but I eat all the cake I want. Where? I didn't even, how? It makes no sense. Do you not understand the words that are coming out of your mouth? Is it not clear the way that it's going? How can you say I connect to God, but I don't listen to God? Where does it go? Really, the misconception really is as follows. Really, when people say that they're spiritual, meaning that they're more into the supernatural, they're not connecting to God. Because if you connect to God, you go and you listen to what God says to do. You might not be perfect. You might not be fully there. But at least you know that you're not fully there, and I'm working my way towards getting, fully there. But if you're going and you're being a Shmorgesboard Jew and you're picking this and you're not, you're taking only certain things out, you're never going to, you're not going to be dealing on a level that you're doing it with joy and enthusiasm. You're not connecting to God because you're just picking what you like. You're not trying to have this connection to God. As if for a relationship, you go and you're married and you tell your spouse, I'll do X, Y, and Z for you, but I'm not doing this and this and this. A different zip code, different rules. You go and you start making. You're not committed to the relationship. Then it's not real. You're real only in one zip code and not on another zip code. If it's not a real relationship, then it's not a real relationship. Again, it's better that you even do something, even if it's not real and it's not there yet, because hopefully, as the stories that we said, it will get there. But just know that you're not fully there yet. But now here we begin to understand the amazing chiddush that Antigonus is telling us. Antigonus is telling us, don't serve God that you should do reward, that just for reward, meaning that if you serve God just for the reward in the next world, then you're clocking in, you're clocking out. You're not doing anything out of joy. You're not connecting to God. You're not having any enjoyment for whatever you're doing, and you're losing out on so much. You're losing out on this world, and you're also going to be losing out a little bit on the next world. Granted, you'll get rewarded for everything you do in the next world, but this world, you're not enjoying anything that you do, and this is what Antigonus is saying. Don't serve God just for the reward of the next world. Serve God, connect to God. Have that joy. Do it because you want to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Do it for the reasons that you just want to connect, and that comes out of joy and out of happiness and out of enthusiasm. And with that, there's so much blessings, that come from that. And this is Zohar says, there are two levels of service. There's a servant and a son. So a servant, what's a servant? Let's say a hired worker, right? If you hire a driver, and then you tell this driver, oh, by the way, I would like you to mop my kitchen floors. The guy says, well, I'm a driver. I'm not your maid. This, my job is my job. And the guy says, no, not interested. And even furthermore, let's say you go and after hours, you hire this driver from 9 to 5. 10 o'clock at night, you call up the driver and be like, I need you to drive me to an important meeting now. The guy says, I'm out of the clock. I'm off the clock. Don't bother me now. And rightfully so. So a servant, someone who serves like a hired wage, they clock in and they clock out. They do things only because they want to get a paycheck and that's it. But then you have another type of level of service, and that is a service of like a son. A service of a son, if a mother or father calls up a son at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, listen, I need your help, can you come to me right now? The son says, I'm sorry, my obligations don't start until 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. No, 9 o'clock, I'm only 9 to 5, I'm here to service you. No, if a son loves their parents, loves the mother, loves the father, they will wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and do what the parents want them to do, out of love and out of, of course, I'm here. Like they're not going to go and be like, I'm asking for a payment. No, I'm here. I have gratitude to you, I have so much for you, I love you, and I want to just do for you. Like, of course, you did so much for me. It's not even a consideration. These are the two levels that the Zohar speaks about. This is the levels that Antigonus is referring to. We have to know how to go and connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, how we go and connect to it in a joyful, enthusiastic, and a connection type of way. The Magen Duvna brings down, the Rabbi Yaakov Kranz brings down this mashal, this parable, that you had this mighty prince, and he went on a trip with their family and their servants on the entourage, and they went to, as they were traveling, they stopped by certain very, very successful, wealthy people. They stayed in their houses, and they were hosted, but these wealthy people hosted the prince and his entourage. So the first night, this rich man hosts the prince, and they do it to the level of the prince, the banquets and this, go the full 9 yards. The next morning, the prince goes over to this wealthy man and says, okay, listen, I know you spent a lot of money on me. How much, what's the bill? I want to cover it. So the wealthy man says, okay, the bill is, a certain amount of money. The prince takes out his gold purse and pays this person in full. The next night, he goes and travels to a different person, a different wealthy man. And this wealthy man also throws his banquet and puts everything on the level of a prince. And the next morning, the prince goes over to this wealthy man and says, okay, how much do I owe you? What's the damage? And this wealthy man says, what? What do you mean damage? He says, what do you mean, what do you owe me? You don't owe me anything. Be like, no, what do you mean? You spent a lot of money on me. I want to pay you for it. He says, pay me for it? Chas v'shalom, are you kidding me? God forbid. I'm going to take money from it? What, it was an honor and a privilege to be able to go and have the prince in my house, and I'm able to go and pay for the prince? Are you kidding me? I'm never going to take a cent from you. It's my honor. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for coming. And, the prince is like, wow, he's like so moved by it. So he goes and says, okay, no, I want to give you, now I want to pay you even more. He says, no, I'm not taking anything. He refused to take any gifts or, any payment. What happened, for these two people? How does the prince feel to these two? The first person, he gave them what he wanted, gave them a amazing banquet, an amazing state, and he paid him for it. The transaction is finished in the first night, and it's done. The second night, he was so moved by this person that just wants to do for the prince that for the rest of this person's life, the prince kept on sending him gifts and kept on saying, what do you need? You got to connect, anything I could do to help you. He was so moved that someone wants to be so close to it. So who gained more out of this transaction? The person that just got paid back, or this other person, the second person who just kept on getting more and more gifts for the rest of their life? It always had a connection. One phone call, it says, Prince, I need your help. It says, of course, what won't I do for my dear friend who wants to honor me so much? This explains the Magen of Duvna, the two levels of service of a Jew. You have a Jew that goes and says, okay, God, I did X, Y, and Z, pay up. Where is the mullah? Give me the payment. Where it is. Or you have another Jew and be like, what? God, payment? Are you kidding me? I love the fact that I'm able to serve you. I have so great appreciation that I'm able to connect to you. And thank you so much for everything that you would give me. It's just like which connection grows, which is a higher level of service. Says the Mesillat Yesharim, this is the difference. This is what Antigonus is saying. Antigonus is saying, don't serve God just for the reward in the next world. Rather, serve God for the reward in this world. And how you can do that? You have to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu through joy, through love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this, now we could begin to understand that this is the understanding of why the Mishnah ended off and have fear of heaven. What's have fear of heaven? What does it have to do? Where's the love of heaven? And the answer is the whole first part of the Mishnah is speaking about having a connection of love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of connecting to the Baruch, doing it with joy and enthusiasm. And that's why, how do we serve God? Through love and fear. And that's why the first whole entire section of the Mishnah is speaking about love. The second one is speaking about is about fear. So now we'll close it off. We'll finish off with two thoughts, and we'll close it off. Rav Chaim of Krasna once brought his students. Let me back it up a little bit. So we see this as like, the way that you're supposed to go and you're supposed to serve God. We see that you're supposed to serve God out of joy. The question is, how do we get there? Right? All nice and dandy. Okay, so now we get it. So we get it. You have to do the joy, enthusiasm, not for that world or next world, but rather for joy in this world. Everything that we said, right? We get it. How? So Rav Chaim of Krasno once took his students to observe a trapeze artist where they would walk on a small rope, a very thin rope, across a very, at a very high height, and they would walk across it. And the students were looking at this, circus act, and they're like, "Rabbi, why are you bringing us here? Like, well, like we're students, we're learning to become rabbis. Look, you can bring us over here." So the rabbi goes over to them and says, "What do you think this guy is thinking? This guy makes a lot of money every time he makes a show." Right, everybody gathers around. This is the olden days. There was no TV. This was the entertainment. So he makes a lot of money. He charges a lot of money, and he goes to heights and he starts climbing across it. What do you think he's thinking about? Think he's thinking about how much money he's going to make? Think he's thinking about how much? No, he's thinking about one thing and one thing only. Let me get across without falling. They did this without any strings. Let me get across without falling. And if he loses his concentration, he loses everything. And this Rav Mendel Futterfass, a Chabad rabbi who was exiled to Siberia. And, why was he exiled? Why was he sent to Siberia? Because he was teaching, Judaism and under the Soviet regime. And he was inside with all bunch of criminals. And one of the people that he was stuck with was a circus tightrope walker. And the trapeze, this guy also liked the trapeze artist, did different things with the swinging and whatnot. And he goes and he says, ask them, he says, what's the secret for this? What's the secret that you're able to go and you're able to, walk across it? And this tightrope worker goes and tells him that when I get on the rope, I don't think about anything. I think about one thing and one thing only, and I look at one point at the end of it, and I say, I only focus on that, and I focus on nothing else. That's the only thing that I focus on. And if I focus on anything else, I miss everything. And this is the lesson that Rabbi Mendel would teach his students. He says, this is life. Life is a tightrope walk. We get distracted by so many things, but if we focus on one thing, and nothing else exists, we're able to do that thing to the best level. Many people, they do the Judaism, they do the things, but we're very distracted. We have to focus on one thing, and that is connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, connecting to God. Every mitzvah that we do, we're connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what we need to focus on. When we focus on that, we're able to go, and we'll be able to, to achieve that. It's all one step at a time. So, looking at what Antigonus said to his students, Tzaddik and Bai says, how did they mess up? How did they fall so far? Number one, they wanted to go to this far off destination, so they just found a way. But also number two is they didn't have, and this is why Antigonus finishes off, you should have the fear of heaven. Because if you have the fear of heaven, that's always going to correct you of where you need to go. That's always going to be that factor, that balancing factor that's going to say, okay, wait a minute. Remember the focus, remember the point, remember what you need to, because if you have fear of heaven, you're going to put yourself in the right position, you're going to put yourself in the correct path, and you're going to walk that tightrope. And this, when somebody goes and does Judaism in this manner, they do Judaism in a completely different fashion. And that is that if I'll give you two quick stories, then we'll end off. I have to jump off. So the Rabbi Reuven, the Rabbi Reuven finds and brings down the story. The story is brought down many times. They have a story about the Vilna Gaon. So the Vilna Gaon once they were not able to find a single esrog for the Vilna Gaon, and they, for anybody in that area, and for Sukkot, and they were sending messengers everywhere. They found one guy who had an esrog, and the student saw him and says, "Okay, listen, we need to go and we need to get this esrog for the Vilna Gaon." And the guy says, "Yeah, it's not for sale, and we'll pay you anything that you want." Be like, it's not for sale. And be like, "Well, any amount of money, just name it. Well, it's for if it's Gadol, the tzaddik of the generation." He says, "We'll get anything that you wanted. Just give us a price and you'll get the payment." And the guy's saying is, "I'm not, it's not for sale." And then he says, "You know what? I'll tell you what. If the rabbi is willing to give me the reward for the mitzvah, he can have it. I'll give it to him, but I get the full reward." So they were like, "Oh, we're going to tell us the rabbi." They go back, they go to the rabbi, and they say, "Listen, they didn't even know how to say it. They're like, we feel bad. We found an esrog, but we can only get it if you give the reward for the mitzvah." And the Vilna Gaon jumps up and he says, "Perfect." He says, "That's amazing. I'll do that in a minute, in a second." He says, "Of course." And they were like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah." He says, "How many times in my life did I have a chance to serve God, just to serve God for no ulterior motives? I'll sign off everything that he wants. He'll get the full reward for it, but at least I'll have the mitzvah. I'll have the thing of of the esrog." How did the Vilna Gaon get to such a level? Because the reason why he did mitzvahs was not for reward. It was just to connect HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because this is what God wants to do, and this is what he was supposed to do. And we see this also with the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim, I'm saying it fast because I have to jump off. The Chafetz Chaim had his first, the first Knesset Gedolah in 1923. There was a gathering of all the rabbis, and they were traveling through by the train stations, and every stop the Jews waited to greet all the rabbis, and the Chafetz Chaim always stayed in the car, and the other rabbis went, they greeted other people, they went and they gave them blessings. Rav Moshe Shapiro goes over. Rav Moshe Shapiro was the founder of the Yeshiva Chachmei Lublin. He was also the originator of the Daf Yomi. He goes over to the Chafetz Chaim and he says, "Rabbi, why are you not coming out to greet the people?" So the Chafetz Chaim says, "What? I'm going to go out and get all this honor? I'm going to end up burning for this, getting all this honor and pleasure from having it. Like, no, it's not for me. It's like, I don't need this." So Rav Moshe Shapiro responded something very fascinating. He said, "Yeah." He said, "You have a whole group of Jews, Rabbi, that are sitting out there and they will get so much pleasure by seeing you. They're going to get so much pleasure by just looking at you and getting your blessing. Isn't it worth to go through a little suffering in Gehenna because of the honor that you're getting just so that you can make some Jews happy?" The Chafetz Chaim heard this. Not a second, he got up and went right straight out. Because when someone's doing something for the right reason, they end up doing it the right way. It doesn't matter what's going to come out. If they have the right reason what they're doing something, it's going to come out the right way. This is the lesson that Antigonus is telling us. The lesson that Antigonus is telling us is that you have to do it for the right reason. Don't do it for the reward. If you do it for the reward, you're a Jew that clocks in, clocks out, and that's all you're doing it. But rather do it so that you can connect to God. And if you can connect to God, then it's a whole different level of reward. Tzaddik and Bai says they didn't have this mindset because they wanted out, so they just got it. They got out. They were the clock in, clock out, and the second that they had a way out, they were able to leave and get this way out of all their obligations that they had to do. But that's because they were wrong. They didn't have the Yiras Shamayim. They didn't have the fear of heaven among them. But we have to go and we have to realize that what Antigonus is saying is such a big lesson, and this is why when you look at it, you look at the lesson and be like, wait a minute, just like when we have when we started off saying the story with when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Nasa Adam, let us make man, because there's two important factors. There's how clear something is, and the lesson that can come out from it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, let someone who wants to make a mistake, Really, what Antigonus is saying over here, it was very clear. We have multiple sources in the Torah that says that you do get reward. So what? Tzaddik and Bai says they completely misread the situation because they wanted to. But rather, what the message that comes out is so powerful, so important, so imperative, and this is what Antigonus is saying. You have to serve God out of joy, out of love, to connect to Kadosh Baruch Hu, because when you do that, you get this world and the next world. But if you serve God only for the reward of the next world, then you're never going to get anything. You're going to get the next world, but you're not going to live in this world. You're not going to enjoy this world. And this is the lesson that Antigonus is telling us, that you have to serve Kadosh Baruch Hu out of love and out of joy, and of course you have also out of fear. And once you have the fear of heaven, that's going to guide you to the right path. We're going to finish off with a quick kapitel to for Eretz Yisrael, and then we're going to close off. I apologize, we're not able to open up to any questions today. I mamish have to run. We're going to start off as usual with chapter Kuf Lamed 130. Shir Malais Mima Makim Karasicha Adonai Adonai Shema Bekoili Tiena Aznecha Kashuv Bois Lekol Tachanonai Ima Vainis Tish Maria Adonai Mi Amoid Kib Chas Lechaliman Tivarei Kivisi Adonai Kib Sonafshi Vilidvarei Chalti Nafshi la Adonai Yesharim la Biker Shamim la Biker Yachal Yisrael la Adonai Ki Ma Adonai Yachased Varbeim Maifadus V'hu Yiftas Yisrael Mikol Avanesav Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael Hanasunim Batzara Vashivya Imdim Bein Bayam Ubein Bayabashal Hamakim Yirachem Aleim V'yotziam Mitzara L'Rvacha Ma'afela L'Ara Meshiba L'Gula Hashta Bagala Bizman Kariv V'Namar Amen. Thank you all for joining. Until next time, may you have amazing of brachas, just adbli die of everything.